Peace at your hand. Part 2. Chapter 2, The African Wiseman. In the process of finding answers and solutions in my questions and problems that I posed in Chapter 1 above, my eye opened and I was led to an African wiseman. The wisdom of an African patriarch and his 30 children. A rich African patriarch had many children. His title name was Okiabua, meaning a ruler of 2 kingdoms. Many a time he would assemble his many children together to teach them about things of life and death. He taught them by asking questions, and finding their opinions about a subject, before he would start to lecture them. Each time he found out, that all the many children have many different opinions and beliefs on the subject matter. These divided opinions and beliefs made it difficult for him to teach them the truth as he has experienced in life. If this continued like that, it would mean that he had nothing to impart to his posterity about the true nature of life, except division, disunity and conflict. This old man who had the secret of man and gods, decided to show his children, the consequence of their disunity, conflicts and non-adherence to the established rules. One day he assembled all his children and formed them in 3 groups. Group 1 was made up of those most stubborn children who would do everything to uphold their belief even if it amounted to their death. Group 2 was made up of those children who listened to others' opinions and were able to reach an agreement if necessary. Group 3 was made up of those children who had their opinions but abided by the rules of their family to uphold peace and order. Each group consisted of 10 children. The father had 3 large halls with keys. He emptied the halls without any wooden or metal object left. He labeled the halls with big signs 1 to 3. He selected a subject about life for discussion and gave it to them. He gave them instruction and said, "Go in your respective halls according to your group and number, do what you like to defend your opinions and beliefs. The door will be open for you to come out after 3 hours." Reports. After 3 hours, the wise man opened the doors and all the children came out and assembled again. The results of their discussion were as follows. Group 1 were fighting, quarreling, swearing and near committing suicide and murder. The wise man knew this, therefore, he left the halls empty even without any chair or bench. In short, Group 1 came out with conflict, confusion and chaos. Group 2 reported thus, "We listened to everyone's opinion, but to what purpose would it be if we all do what we liked with these 10 varying opinions without directions or goals?" Group 3 reported thus, "We listened to everyone's opinion, we made a temporary rule to organize our opinions. We elected a leader to coordinate our opinions and made a rule how we could use each opinion to our good in future, because we valued each person's opinion equally." Analysis of the African Wiseman's work. Group 1 was the most stubborn of the wise man's children. They did not listen to their father's teachings about life and human beings. They were the group that knew everything and wanted others to obey them. They did not know how to listen to others and humble themselves that they may learn, grow and develop themselves. They had no discipline and no respect for others. In short, they were examples of natural man. They needed freedom and their father gave them the satanic freedom to teach them the consequence of their actions. This freedom from Satan is called, Mr. Do What You Like. Mr. Do What You Like is the devil's rule to give man a counterfeit freedom to lead man to eternal captivity and woe. It has no rule, no laws, no control and no objective to achieve any good purpose. The road to devil's freedom is wide and unguided, but inside the walls is eternal captivity and there is no return. Group 2 represented the passive listeners of their father's teachings. They did not understand the meanings of their father's teachings. Nevertheless, they were teachable. They had shown their readiness to learn. However, they need strong leadership training and proactive principles. Group 3 represented the maturity and leadership principles that the wise man had labored to infuse into his children's lives. Comments. It is noteworthy that the three groups of the wise men's children were given the same freedom by their father. The same father brought them up in life. Their background differed greatly because of their choices in life. These choices made all the differences in their reaction for the same stimulus. We shall come to this as we progress in this work. The wise man's next stage of action. This African wise man did not end here for his teachings. He continued with the fairy tale of Lioness and the Sheep. The story of the sheep and the lioness. The sheep, while feeding her children, used to tell the children about their enemies. She taught them how to defend themselves from their enemies' dangerous attacks and maneuvers. The sheep also taught her children about their shepherds, the safety and danger in the area where they lived. Once upon a time, a lioness wanted to get easy food for her family. She thought of what to do and finally she concluded to go and eat up all the children of the sheep in a nearby village. One day when the sheep were grazing, the lioness walked to the sheep and asked the sheep if she would allow one of her children to come to her house and babysit her young. The sheep could not say no to this request, otherwise the lioness would come and devour all of them including her. The sheep agreed to send one of the children over that night to take care of the baby lion. The sheep decided to go home and ask her children who would go to the lioness that night and take care of the lion baby. When the sheep got home, she assembled her children and asked them this question: how many times would things happen to you before you learn a lesson? The first one answered, 4 times, and the sheep said you could not go for this errand. The sheep put the same question to the second child and she answered, 3 times, and the sheep said you could not go for this errand. She put the same question to the third child, she answered, 2 times, and the sheep said you could not go for this errand. She put the same question to the fourth child and she answered, 1 time, and the sheep said you could not go for this errand. The sheep turned to the fifth child and put the same question to him and he answered and said, not even once. I shall know it before it happens. The sheep said to him, well my child, you can go to the lioness and take care of her baby this night. The name of this child is Ram or he-sheep. When the ram got to the lioness's home, she instructed the ram to sleep by her left-hand side to take care of the baby when she cried. The ram agreed. When the lioness was asleep, the ram changed place with the lion baby and slept by the lioness's right-hand side, while the baby lion slept by the left-hand side of the lioness. There was no light in the house in the forest. In the middle of the night, the lioness stretched her right hand to her left-hand side and killed the object she felt, thinking that it was the ram. By this time, the ram fled back to his mother and told her the story. When the morning broke, the lioness found out that she had killed her child in place of the ram. From that time until today, the ram was called Ram the Wise. This is the end of this story. The wise man turned to the first group of his children and said, you have seen yourselves that it pays to listen, learn and understand before you fight. Could you answer the following questions and ponder over them? Why do you fight and die for your right here, in this transit camp? Has the dead any right in the land of the living? What is your right in a land where everything is corrupt? Has your right any place in the land of the dead? Do you know that your body is a borrowed garment to you by the Maker? Have you any right over your body? Have you any power to restore your body? You swear with your life. Which is your life? Is it your body or your spirit, which is the you in you? He then turned to all the children and said there is only one person in the world that has the power over life and death. His name is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He is the Son of God because he came to this earth through a virgin called Mary. He is God because the Holy Ghost descended on Mary and the power of God was with her and she conceived and bore a son. For this reason, Jesus Christ could lay down his life for righteous purpose and delivered all men from sin, and as God, he had the power to take his life back again. His body was not subject to decay. The Mother Earth had no claim over his body, because he is God, for though dead as of man, still lives as God. He was not created as we human beings were, therefore his body does not belong to the Mother Earth. The law does not permit the Mother Earth to steal what is not hers. According to the law, he resurrected with an immortal body after 3 days in the tomb. What did this wise man do with the result of his practical teachings? The wise man assembled all his children again to lecture them on the results of the practical teachings. He likened the third group to the ram that learned from his mother's instructions, took care of himself in all situations, and became wiser than the strong enemies were. His knowledge has made him stronger than the enemy lion. He likened the second group to the fourth child of the sheep that had absorbed enough from the mother's teachings but only needed direction and leadership skill. He likened the first group to the first child of the sheep that had not learned enough even to sustain her and needed continuous teaching still. The moment of peace. After this practical teaching and the results thereafter, the wise man asked his children to speak their minds on the whole exercise in order of their groups. Group 1, it was like a drama, most of them started to cry and great tears flowed from their eyes and watered their cheeks, even their robes. Their faces were filled with remorse and regrets for their behaviors. Even their fellow brethren followed them in sympathy cry. Humility and love covered the atmosphere. There was a moment of repentance, forgiveness, joy and happiness. That was a marvelous time of peace, reunion with little talking. Here action was indeed louder than words. Group 2, in the process of this lecture, they had decided to elect a spokesman among them who stood up, with all soberness and thanksgiving to their wise father and even their brethren in the third group for their long patience over their foolishness and laziness all those years that had passed. On behalf of his group he pledged to follow their brother's footstep to allow their father's teachings sink into their hearts and yield fruits desirable for food. Group 3, their leader stood up with tears of joy for the sake of their brethren and thanked their wise father for his great work for them all. He thanked all his brethren for the boldness, courage they had to be able to change and make this a turning point in their lives. With all humility and thanksgiving, brethren, shall we all here pledge our continued faithfulness to our Father to uphold all those eternal principles he had taught us to keep peace and order in our family, that our family would ever be remembered in history? All stood up and said yes. There were kisses, hugging, and shaking of hands all around. The wise man's last lecture. Now that I am old and feeble, I desire that all of my children be like the third group. In the world where we find ourselves, every human being needs the other in all situations in order to live. No one person can exist in isolation. The third group had showed us that every opinion is valuable and needed. You will organize them and use them, that you, by your wisdom, may be stronger than the lion. You have learned that the only way to succeed in life is by rules, order, and obedience thereto. You have seen that Mr. Do What You Like does not give you the freedom you need, it only leads you to eternal captivity and woe. You have learned that the diversity of opinion, belief or culture leads to strength and not division if you organize them with wisdom. Remember that there is no wisdom without foolishness, conversely, there is no foolishness without wisdom. Having said thus, do you now see the wisdom, in all of you, my children, to combine your wisdom, your foolishness, all your weaknesses, strengths and your knowledge, with love, unity, rule and order to create a force stronger than the mountain? If you do this, you will find peace and happiness. No force in the world can break you apart because you are united in love and eternal principles. Analogies drawn from the children of the wise men. The three groups of the wise man's children represent three groups of people that live in the world today, namely. Group 1. The suicide bombers, the religious fanatics, the outlaws, the sport hooligans, the political thugs, the criminal gangs and their associated groups represent the first group of the wise man's children. These are those who, because of their all-knowing attitude, did not learn the essential things of life from their father. Group 2. The second group of the wise man's children were those who listened to their father's instructions but did not understand them, because perhaps of their inability to relinquish their personal beliefs. However, they lacked personal drive and commitment to take the lead because of their half-knowledge. They were not sure of themselves and so looked for excuses. They were afraid to offend anyone. They had lukewarm attitude to everything in life. They always needed leaders and complained about everything. They were afraid to know the truth. We also find these groups of people in our present-day society. They are everywhere, even in the ruling classes of the society. They form the majority of our population. Group 3. The third group of the wise men's children were those who listened to their father's instructions, mastered them, practiced them, humbled themselves to learn more, grew in knowledge and wisdom, developed themselves and became masters and teachers to the rest of their brethren. They were proactive and followed the eternal principles as their father taught them. These groups of people are in our present-day society. Unfortunately, they are not as many as the other two groups of the children. Pride, greediness and affluent of materialism have drawn away many of them from the original group. Nevertheless, we have hope because there is still law and order in practice in many civilized societies today. These masters are leading most of our societies today.